Welcome to CoMotion Labs, Fundamentals for Startups. I'm Ashley Esteban, Associate Director of CoMotion Labs. If you've joined us before, you know that CoMotion Labs is the University of Washington's effort around startup incubation. We operate 3 incubators here on campus: hardware, life science, and a software tech incubator called Startup Hall. We don't take equity in our startups. We don't take any of your IP. We just want to help startups succeed. So if you are a founder looking for somewhere to live, we have a little bit of capacity, so let's talk. While we wait for everyone to join us, I'll make a few announcements. Next week, we'll be hearing from Renato Agrilla, who will be presenting on building high-functioning teams. All of our Fundamentals for Startup presentations are archived on our CoMotion website under Innovation Training Videos. We have covered a variety of topics over the past several years, so if you find yourself with some free time, check out our past talks. For a full schedule and to register for future fundamentals, please visit bit.ly/CoMotion fundamentals. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell. Fundamentals for Startups is funded in part by a grant from the Economic Development Agency. We will be dropping a link in the chat to a short survey. Please tell us who you are, where you're watching, and how you heard about this event. This will help us report back to continue funding. Today, we have Jessica Wiederhorn, who is here to present B2B sales for entrepreneurs and startups. Jessica has 20 plus years of sales experience in B2C, B2G, and B2B software, shipping, supply chain, payments, and cash flow solutions, working for both tech startups and Fortune 500 companies like American Express and FedEx. In 2019, she co-founded Society of Saleswomen, a collaborative and inclusive come-as-you-are nonprofit organization for the modern professional. Both men and women are encouraged to share their voice, time, and heart at SOS online and in-person events, mentorship programs, and retreats. Jessica will take a few questions via chat. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, and I'll turn it over to her.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here back at University of Washington and sharing an important skill that people overlook a lot, which is sales. Today's presentation is really geared toward an entrepreneur or a startup. So if you're not in any of those spaces, that's okay. You can still learn about B2B sales. And that's the other focus today is B2B sales. So if you're planning on selling a product or service to an audience that is a business, that's primarily what I'm focusing on today. If you're an entrepreneur or startup that sells to a consumer or to government, that's okay. There's still some pieces you can pick up here, but a lot of what I'm going to discuss is how to work with businesses in promoting and selling your products and services. So that's going to be the focus. And I'll go through an introduction. Thank you so much, Ashley, for giving an introduction as well. So I'll just add a little bit onto that. I'll talk about what is sales, because I think some people have ideas about what sales is and what it isn't. And I'll go through 3 keys to successful B2B sales. So that's knowing the customer, closing the deal, and then after the sale, which a lot of people don't think about as well. There's some challenges that are unique to entrepreneurs that they may face when they're in a sales scenario. And I'll take questions and then I'll summarize and close. Hope that sounds okay. So just to add on to what Ashley said, I am actually UW Husky. I went to the University of Washington. I graduated a little while ago in 1999, and I went to what was at the time the University of Washington Business School. We all affectionately called our building Balmer High School, but I understand it's now Packard Hall, and it's beautiful and gorgeous. And it's now, of course, Foster School of Business. While I was there, I was actually the vice president of the sales club, which was a very small group, not knowing that I would eventually go into a career in sales, but always had the interest. I was a member of the sorority Kappa Kappa Gamma, which was very convenient to the business schools right across 45th. And I was also a member of the Husky marching band. So I'm very much a Husky at heart. But since then, I actually moved to Los Angeles, which is where I'm based now. I have, like Ashley mentioned, over 20 years of B2B selling experience. I worked initially in marketing in a the high-tech world at a software company in downtown Seattle in the Smith Tower. If you've never been, it's actually a pretty funky building. It's really cool. You should check it out. But that was where I started my career, and the dot-com bubble burst. So there were no high-tech marketing jobs to be found in Seattle. And that's when I shifted to sales. And I found that The career was really fulfilling. There's a lot of flexibility and a good opportunity to make money. It was later on, through my career, I worked at a lot of Fortune 500 companies and I worked at a few other startups, but I decided to get my MBA and I'm currently in that process right now. I'm graduating in May, but it's at USC School of Marshall School of Business here in Los Angeles. So when the two teams play against each other, I do wear purple. I will say that. The other piece of my career, which is why I feel like this topic is really relevant, is I too am an entrepreneur. I co-founded this nonprofit organization that Ashley described a couple of years ago. And after my MBA program, when I get some things together, I hope to open an angel fund called Bitches in Business. I hope I'm allowed to say that, but it's to help provide seed funding for women entrepreneurs. So that's my focus next year as well. So that's a little bit about me. And if, like Ashley said, if you're interested in Society of Saleswomen, we're on all the social media, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can check us out, check out our events. Half of our members are actually entrepreneurs. So, even though it seems like it's a place for women in sales, like Ashley mentioned, we do welcome men. We do welcome people who are not in sales, who maybe want to build sales skills, build confidence, get mentorship, understand sales process a little more. So check us out if you'd like to learn more about sales or about confidence building. All right. So before I really get into the meat of the B2B sales, I want to throw out a question. And I know that you can comment and feel free to comment if you like, but you can also just think in your head about this. Why do you think that startups fail? And what do you think is the number one reason startups fail? So there is a CB Insights poll that was taken with 101 startups, and they asked them why their startup failed. And I'm just curious to see what people think it is. There's a lot of reasons why startups fail, but what do you think is the number one reason? So just think about that for a second, and then I'll share the answer. So according to this poll, the number one most frequently cited reason for startup failure is no market need. And you can see there's a million other reasons why startups fail as well, but the number one, 42% of why startups fail is that there's no market need. And there's the obvious reason for this. So if you think in a very logical way, okay, there's no market need for the product or service. So as an example, if you make pillows for pinkies, nobody really needs a pillow for their pinky. So that makes sense. There's no market need. But what's not described here is something that I feel like is very relevant to our conversation today, and that is perceived market need. So basically that means that somebody out there, could use your product or service, but they don't know that they need it. Maybe you're ahead of your time and you've created something that nobody knows what to do with yet, or maybe you have something and they just can't connect the dot between how your product can help them. And so I just want you to think about that, because that is ultimately why we have sales. So sales exists because marketing is one thing. You can market to people, you can go on social media, you can market out your product or service, however you want to market it. But sales is connecting that dot between a need or a want and what your product has and that's available. So that's where the connection of sales comes in. And I know as an entrepreneur or as a startup, you're probably used to pitching your business to a VC, to an angel fund, to an investor of some sort. That is sales, because you're selling, your company to another entity who wants to buy in. But this type of sales is different. And that's because this type of sales is focused on the customer and focused on generating revenue. So I want to talk a little bit more about what is sales. And I bring this up because I think in general, people think of the word sales as a dirty word, as it's kind of gross, it's creepy, it kind of makes your skin crawl. You see this cheesy, like used car salesman looking dude. And, it's pushy, it's bothersome. You have these friends maybe who have side gigs on Facebook or Instagram who are pushing product on you or pushing things on you. It just feels very pushy and aggressive. And so we shy away from it because we don't want to be that person. But I want you to rethink of what sales actually could be or is to a lot of people. And sales is actually helpful. You're helping somebody achieve a goal or solve a problem. You're being a consultant and finding solutions with them as a partner. Sales can be a tool for them to access growth of their own company. So if they're trying to grow their own company, especially in this B2B scenario, you can sell and provide a product or service that helps them grow. Sales really, when it comes down to it, is relationship building. People sell to people. And so it's more about creating a relationship. And as an entrepreneur, sales is necessary. I mean, if you're creating a business that's selling a product or service, what's your ultimate goal? Your ultimate goal is to have customers who buy things. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs get caught up with, oh, I'm getting funding. And so, I don't have to worry about cash because I'm just burning through the cash that I'm getting through the investors. But ultimately, you want to generate your own revenue. You may not be generating profits yet, but you want to generate your own revenue, and generating revenue can only increase your valuation. So when you go to that next level of funding, or you go to that round of funding, you have increased your valuation by adding revenue to that. So sales is really, a vital component of having a business. If there's one thing that I can say that is a running theme through this entire discussion today, is that the difference between pitching a VC or pitching an angel fund and selling to a customer is that when you're pitching to the VC, you're really talking about you. My product, my service is amazing. This is why it's so great. You need to invest in it. It's, my thing is wonderful. When you're going to a customer, you got to take all that away because it's not about you anymore. It is about them. So if I could say it again, sales to a customer is not about you. It is all about them. So everything that I describe moving forward is really going to be about focusing on them, on the customer. And I know that there's a lot of people who don't have sales skills or don't have sales practice. Again, it's really about building relationships, making a connection, and connecting the dot for somebody else. And how you do that is you really want to get to know your customer. So this is the first key point that I wanted to discuss with you. Now, some of you have maybe already done this, or some of you might be early on in your entrepreneur experience, but knowing your customer starts out with, who is your customer? And this is only going to help your sales process down the road, because if you're sort of saying, anybody could use my product or service, like it really doesn't matter who, you're only hurting yourself when it comes to your success rate in selling your product or service to a business. Because if you can tailor your messaging and tailor what you're offering to, again, solve a specific need or problem, you'll have a lot more success. So, starting out with a basic thing, like what are the demographics or psychographics of your customer? And again, in a B2C world, that might be an individual person, and you might create an avatar, like who's your average person. But in a B2B sense, who is the customer that will be purchasing or using your product? How are they going to use it? What does it look like when it's been implemented in their company? What does it solve for? Do you have an optimal customer profile of who that is? Is it a specific industry? Is it a specific size company with a number of employees? Is it a specific geography? Understanding this and being really clear about will allow you to focus your efforts on marketing and generating leads, whether it's joining an association, if you're focused on maybe the construction industry, zeroing in on industries, publications, associations that are around the construction industry so that you can get more targeted lead generation. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, in addition, you really need to know who you're talking to. So it's really important to identify who's the decision maker and who are the stakeholders in the decision. This is very common in a business setting, especially if it's a little bit bigger business. So you may be a software company that helps salespeople, manage a pipeline or something like that. I don't know. I'm just making something up right now. But the VP of sales might be the decision maker. Yes, we want to get this software for our cloud services for our sales team. However, the VP of sales might not be the person writing the check. That might be the CFO, or that might be the CIO because it's software or cloud service. They're in charge of all of those technology purchases. So that might be a decision maker. The individual sales team who's using the software or cloud service may not make the decision, but they might have a lot of power in influence in saying what works and what doesn't work. They may not like the product. They may not like the service. So while they're not ultimately saying yes to it, they may have a really impactful influence on the decision. So you want to make sure that you're including in all these decision makers and stakeholders when you're approaching them. And finally, if you don't know any of this information, that's okay, because there's all sorts of ways to find it. There's market research out there that exists. You can run focus groups without even having a product, just to see how people respond or how they react, get their questions and their feedback, and then sort of create that optimal customer profile. So it's really where you want to start if you're kind of starting from nothing, is just figure out who your customer is. But you really, again, want to go a little bit deeper and getting to know who they are. So I like this process, and I'm going to share this process with you. There's a book called The Challenger Sale out there. It came out several years ago. It's by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson, and it's a whole philosophy on using customer insights as part of your sales process. So I will go into a little bit more specific example, and I'll use the example that they actually give, not in the book, but they also have a full training program. And if you're interested in that training program, it's actually 6 steps. I'm just covering kind of a high level, like 3 steps here today. But if you want to go through the training, they have one-day workshops that are really great on this customer insight, commercial insights piece of this. But it's run by Gartner Group. Gartner Group actually purchased CEB, which is the company that runs this Challenger Sale training program. And it's amazing. It's something that I used a lot toward the end of my career at American Express, and use it today now with Society of Saleswomen. Our nonprofit, even though we're a nonprofit organization, we do actually partner with businesses and have memberships that we also sell to businesses to help with their employee retention and creating mentorship programs and the like. So we still use this process as well. There's 3 components to this process, and I want to talk about it because it's a different way to approach a customer, and it's a deeper way to approach a customer. So the 3 steps that I'm going to review with you are: find the problem, reframe the issue, and present the solution. And in this case, you can see the dental equipment here. I'm going to use the example of a dental supply company that maybe you've created. And I don't know why my page is missing. There it is. Okay. So imagine for a moment, and this is something that CEB uses in their training, or Gartner uses in their training. Imagine for a moment that you created a company that makes dental tools, and you've discovered an ergonomic way to create, and I don't know the name of this thing, so I apologize for any of the medical people out there, the teeth scraper thing that cleans your teeth, the sharp little thing that we all love. So imagine that you have a dental supply company and you've invented this ergonomic tool to clean the teeth. So it helps the hygienists work more efficiently. You know, the patient's teeth get 10 times cleaner and everybody's happy, and it's an amazing tool. So most people, when they're going out to sell this thing, they're going to go to a dental office and go to a dentist and say to them, I have this amazing new tool. It's patented. It's ergonomic. It'll get all your patients' teeth cleaner. Your dental hygienist will love it. That's kind of like the standard. I mean, that's what people think. You know, here's my amazing tool. You're going to love it, and it's going to be amazing. But what this process does is you're looking to solve a problem. So while a problem might be that patients' teeth aren't getting as clean, you want to go a little bit deeper on the problem. And what that means is getting to know your customer and getting to know their business in particular. So in this example, you want to do your research and you want to get to know your customer. You know already that dental offices are the target market for your dental supplies. So you know that. You know that dental hygienists use your product. You understand that as well. You know that there is some pain associated with using this particular tool. That's why you created this ergonomic tool and you've patented it. So when you approach the dentist's office, instead of just going straight into, hey, I have this ergonomic tool, you're going to do your research and dig a little deeper for a problem that exists within the business. So as an example, you may approach a dentist's office and say, I work for a dental supply company, but I'm really interested in understanding your business better. Do you mind if I ask questions of some of your staff? And you start talking to the dental hygienist, and you come to find out that sure enough, some of these hygienists have carpal tunnel, their wrists hurt, and so much so that 5 of the hygienists will take 1 or 2 sick days a month because they just need a break on their wrists. So you find out that they take a day off a month, let's say, and then you also talk to the receptionist who does the billing, and she says, we charge $300 a cleaning. You also find out that the hygienists clean about 10 people a day. So now you're starting to do the math and you're realizing, okay, there's 5 hygienists that aren't showing up in the office. They're taking sick days. That means there's 10 cleanings that aren't happening at $300 a pop. We're now talking about, potentially 10 absent days. That's $15,000 a month in lost revenue, or $180,000 a year in lost revenue. That is a problem. Okay, so notice I haven't really once talked about the tool. I'm talking about a business problem that exists within this dentist's office. And that's not something you would know just walking up to the dentist's office. This has to do with getting to know the customer, talking through with them, finding out what their issues are, what their problems are, and getting to the bottom of that. So what happens now? So you now know there's a real problem. You want to approach the dentist or whoever the decision maker is. So you want to approach them with this problem. And this might be an uncomfortable problem. Maybe they know that they have an issue with this, or maybe they don't know. So instead of, like we said earlier, hey, dentist, I have this awesome ergonomic tool. I think it'll be great and your patients will love it. Most dentists may say, why would I want to spend money on that right now? And my tools work just fine. And I haven't heard a patient complain once. You're now approaching them with, hey, I know there's a problem with absenteeism and your dental hygienist. They get carpal tunnel, their wrists hurt, and they take sick days. Did you know this costs you approximately $180,000 a year? That's a very different approach. And again, it has nothing to do with your tool yet. You haven't even mentioned your tool. So why we do this is because you want to create an opportunity for the dentist or the business owner to think, what happens if I don't solve this problem? What's going to happen to me and my business if we continue as is? So you want to disrupt their thinking, disrupt the way the business is operating today, so that when you go and present the solution, which of course is your ergonomic tool, you've now set up the process to say, here's the bigger problem that's going on. Oh, and by the way, we have a patented ergonomic tool that eases and in some cases heals carpal tunnel. Hopefully you've done your market research on this. But it can eliminate these sick days that you're facing and therefore bring back $180,000 of revenue back to your business every year. Is that something that you're interested in pursuing farther? And they can talk with you about that. Maybe they haven't heard of this before. They didn't notice it. And by the way, we're the only tool on the market that's patented for ergonomics. So you're now presenting a solution, a way that you're solving a problem that really no one would ever think a dental supply company would solve this revenue problem. And by the way, you're the only one in the market that has this patented tool. So it's a very, very different approach. It does take time to do the research. So I know as entrepreneurs, you're very busy. You're setting up your business, the financials for the business, you're meeting with VCs, you're developing your product or service. But if you can take the time, especially with those first few customers, to really understand them and their problem, you're going to create relationships. And that's really the basis for sales, is building the relationships. Some things to keep in mind as you're building relationships, just like that story I just told, 80% of this is listening. So you may be talking, but hopefully it's asking questions and it's not talking about, here's my ergonomic tool, you better use it, everyone's going to love it. It's more asking questions about the things going on within their business and how you can help solve their problems, reach their goals. ask questions about their business. It really, again, needs to be about them. Other ways you can gather information, if you're selling to public companies, financial earnings calls are a great way to listen in to hear what's going on with the company, what struggles they have. Reading financial statements, reading annual reports, another way. If you're selling to smaller private companies, you can find an equivalent large public company. Sometimes in the industry, they're having similar issues with supply chain or costs. Again, these things aren't directly related maybe to your product or service, but your product and service can potentially help solve that problem. You really want to get to know their numbers, their information. And as you start building this relationship, you'll become a subject matter expert in their eyes. You'll become that person so that, later down the road, if they're looking at an irrigation system or some other type of equipment, they know you as a go-to person because that's part of the trust that you're building in this relationship. The other piece of building a relationship is just making sure you show up. And I think this is true for any relationship in life, whether it's your spouse or kids or anything else, is showing up, being there, following through, doing what you're going to say you're going to do. If you're working with a business who's not quite sure yet if they want to move forward with you, just being patient and persistent and being there. No activity is a waste. You're going to continue to build the relationship, which is important so that when they are ready to make some sort of a decision, you're there and ready for them. I have one quick story about persistence. I used to get complimented by on my persistence with a lot of my customers, and it's because I was a kind text stalker. But basically, when someone's not quite ready to make a decision, or they're still on the fence about something, or it's not the right time, I always ask them if it's okay for me to follow up with them, and I let them set for me the schedule. And so I'll ask them, what's the best way to stay in touch with you? Is it text, email, or phone? And a lot of people actually said text, which is sort of amazing to me because I think, we all receive texts. We can easily dismiss emails or LinkedIn messages or whatever, but a text, a lot of us take the time to read, especially if it's not a spam thing. But if it's from a person, we'll take the time to read it. And so, a lot of people would say text, and then I would ask them, how often or how frequently would you like me to reach out to you? And I let them set the tone for me. And so that when I start bothering them on a weekly or monthly basis, I'm not really bothering them. I know that's something that a lot of people feel like is related to sales, that you're bugging someone or you're being aggressive. If I let them set the tone on how frequently I can communicate with them and how I can communicate with them, that worry goes away because now they've set the tone, they've set the pace for that. So that's just one way to stay persistent and be top of mind for somebody who's a buyer. So continuing the dental story, you found the problem, you've presented a solution, you've explained why you're the only one who can solve for this problem. Closing the deal is just another part of the sales process. And sometimes this can happen in one meeting, and sometimes it could take a year. But the ideal with closing the deal is you want to make sure that, and is my screen changing? Here we go. You want to make sure that there's a couple pieces you want to keep in mind. So number one, throughout the whole sales process, and I love to remind this because particularly in the challenger process, again, you're really getting to know them, is to never sell on price. Don't start with price. Don't put price out there, only because you don't want people to get hung up on that, start comparing you to other things. You want them to be focused on what the real issue is or what the real problem is that you're solving for. Now, if you're a subscription type service, obviously a lot of times, or if you're just kind of an online service, your pricing will be out there. That's fine. But even in that world, we're a subscription membership type service as well at Society of Saleswomen. We do still negotiate with in a B2B environment. So a lot of times they're going to expect some sort of negotiation. And I would say that make sure you know what their alternatives are, because one alternative is to do nothing. One alternative is to go with another company if they're actively looking for something. But just know what you're up against, so to speak, and also have ready when you're going into negotiation with different levers that you can use. So maybe they want an additional feature added, or maybe they want something removed. Okay, if they remove something, then maybe the price changes to something else. Or perhaps there's, they want a lot of extra things, and you'll say, great, but maybe pay us, in 5 days or 10 days instead of 30 days, or, sign a 2-year contract with us. So there's all sorts of different levers you can use when you're negotiating a deal with another business. But ultimately what you want is you want both parties to feel good. You don't want to sell yourself short. You don't want to walk away from something like you gave away the farm, and you don't want them to feel like they got cheated out of something either. So sometimes it's really good to just ask straight out, what will it take for you to feel comfortable moving forward with purchasing the ergonomic tools? That's an example of a statement you can say that's not overly salesy. And hopefully if you have the relationship, they'll be comfortable enough telling you, I have a tight budget, so I don't know how I'm going to work this. And maybe you can work out some sort of a payment plan. There's a lot of things, tools at your that are available to use in these types of scenarios. So just look for that win-win. The way that I just said that, is there anything that will help you be comfortable moving forward with purchasing these tools? Is what's considered a closing sentence. There's a lot of different ways to say it, but you can say, is there any reason why you wouldn't move forward with this today? A lot of us do this if you interview somewhere, if you're pitching to a VC, who's ready to invest, Shark Tank, they always love to say that. So there's always some sort of a closing line that you put in there that signifies moving to the next step. And what this also does when you ask a question like that, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to move forward with getting these ergonomic tools and, bringing back $180,000 of revenue to your business every year? You're just sort of recapping what you covered, but it gives them an opportunity to state any kind of concerns they have. So if anybody has a concern, if there's something going on that's holding them back from moving forward, from purchasing a product or service, you want them to say it out loud so you can help address it. So this is a way to get them to say it out loud. And so when you ask a question like that, is there anything holding you back from moving forward? They can then bring up, I'm just worried about my budget. So there's an old school method that I put on here. It's called repeat, reassure, and resume. And it essentially is, part of it is finding out what's really behind the concern. So I would say before you do the repeat, reassure, resume, just ask a few more questions. What is it about your budget that you're concerned about? We may automatically assume that they don't have enough money, but that might not be the case. If you say, what is it about the budget you're concerned about? They say, well, we really wanted to buy this other piece of equipment. So I just don't think I could do both right now. I'd rather get this equipment first and then maybe look at this. So now you know a little bit more information, and you could go even further if you wanted to, dive a little bit more with questions, but you can repeat back to them what you said. I understand that you're concerned about budgeting and you have this other piece of equipment you want to buy. Reassure them that we want you to buy that equipment too. But consider, if you're saving 100 or you're getting back 180,000 in revenue, you can use that toward the purchase of your new equipment instead of taking out of the budget you currently have. And now you're spending, a fraction. I'm guessing this ergonomic equipment's less than whatever this piece of equipment is, but you can invest in this, and the returns from that will go to pay for your other equipment. And so is this something that maybe could help you? And so now you're resuming and moving forward again. So that's some ways to address when concerns come up. You don't ever want to dismiss a concern. You really want to take the time to address it and find out the meanings behind the concern. So there's one last piece that a lot of people seem to forget. I always say when you get a signed agreement or you get a signed contract, celebrate it. It's super exciting, but that's not really where the sale ends. It's actually kind of where the sale starts, because just getting there, getting someone to agree to buy your product or service is awesome, but you need to be able to deliver on that. And so let me go, there we go. So especially if you have a technology product or service, there's a lot of times there's implementation involved, or if you have a product, there might be some training involved. So you want to make sure that that product or service is delivered timely, that it's implemented correctly, that you're going through the process all the way through to the end. because the sale really never is over. And I'll tell you why. Even after it's implemented and everything, it's never over. So you want to make sure that at every touch point that you have, that you're continuing to deliver. How you execute is a part of your marketing and a part of your brand. So you can look great on social media and whatever, and you have a really cool product or service, but if it's not executed well, people will know that. So are you able to keep your commitments? Are you able to deliver on what you promised? Are you forming and maintaining that good relationship? Because this customer will carry it with them. And if you have a good customer who is using the product, you've implemented, you've executed well, they are going to go on to refer you, which makes it a lot easier for your beginning sales cycle. I'll tell you, it's a lot easier getting a referral than to have to go out and find clients. So you want to be able to have a satisfied customer who can refer you. These satisfied customers will be great for any sort of pilot you may have. If you want to try a new feature, a new product, a new service, these are the ones that are going to help you work out the kinks. You know, they may be in the construction industry in a specific type of business, and you've learned that, hey, our product service works really well with this type of business. Let's expand it to other businesses in the same market space, the same construction vertical or hospital vertical or whatever it may be. And because they were a great experience, you can now replicate what you did before with many, many other potential prospects or customers. You also can get feedback from them. You can create focus groups with them. There's a lot of data that you can gather from these customers. And hopefully you have in place or will have in place some sort of a CRM system to manage and keep track of the activities that you have with them, because it's really important. You know, it's, you know, when you engage with a customer, you get them on board, you want to keep them. You know, anybody can leave at any time if they want. Maybe they sign a contract where they have to be with you, but at the end of the contract, they could leave. And that's not really what you want if you want to build and grow your business. So ultimately, you want to keep those customers. The last little thing I want to cover here is challenges when it comes to the sales process, specifically for entrepreneurs. And there's really two main challenges that I see with entrepreneurs when it comes to the topic of sales. And the first one, and I've said this already 5 times, is making it about you. So you really have to, again, take off the VC, angel, private equity hat. You do want to pound your chest there. But when it comes to a customer, a buying, paying, living, breathing customer, do not make it about you. You have to make it about them. Really, really, really just try hard to focus on them. And the second thing that I find, especially with new entrepreneurs or people starting out with smaller businesses, is that there's a fear that exists when it comes to sales. You can program all day long and make the best product, and you're like so good at all the business stuff, but you're afraid of reaching out to someone about your product or service. And there's really 2 areas of fear that I think are at play here. The first is you're just afraid to approach people. And I love this example. This is not a high-tech example at all, but I have a friend who is an artist. So she's a solopreneur. She creates beautiful art, and she wants to hang her art in restaurants and like public spaces and things like that. And so like most, business people, entrepreneurs, she's going out to a restaurant and saying, I would like to hang my art in your space. You know, I see you don't have any art here. I'd love to hang my art in your space. And, you know, the restaurant person may or may not, maybe they'll say yes, but sometimes they'll say no, like, okay, thank you. I'll take your name for maybe later. So that is the typical approach that an entrepreneur will take. Look at my stuff. I think it'd be great in your place. That's like the basic story. When we take that challenger sale approach and really do the research, go to the restaurant, eat the food, hang out in there, feel the vibe out, you know, get to know the staff, understand like what the essence of the restaurant is, how the business operates, how the tables turn, you know, what are some challenges within the business? How can this business grow? And you go back to that restaurant owner, and instead of saying, I have great artwork, I see a blank walls, you're saying, you know what? I love your restaurant. It has this deep, moody vibe. I notice that a lot of people like to come here, drink alcohol, eat, and then they just leave. But it seems like more of a hangout space. I feel like, the lighting is great, the music is great, but there's something missing. Perhaps if you had some moody artwork on the walls that can help create that atmosphere, your patrons will stay longer, order more alcohol, order more food, tell their friends about it, and it's almost now a new environment that's being created. Would you consider putting my art on your walls? That's a way different approach than the first approach. So just remember that, again, if you make it about them, it actually sort of removes the fear of like, oh, I'm putting my stuff out there. Are they going to like it or not? It's now saying, hey, this is an awesome place. I want to help make it better. Here's what I'm proposing. It's a very different experience. And if you just keep practicing that, you'll get better and better at it. But it allows you to almost be a partner with the owner of that restaurant, and it becomes a created space. So it takes away the fear of, I don't know if they're going to like me or not. And that takes me into the second fear, which is rejection. And I just have to say that no matter what no matter what you're doing, you're always going to get no. You just will. It's just a part of life. There's an excellent book out there called Go for No by Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton that talks about the word no. And half of their book is about just the psychology of no and getting over that no is a bad thing, because it's a part of life and it actually isn't that bad of a thing. And no sometimes is a redirection. No sometimes means no now, but not no forever. So if we can learn to just accept no as part of the process, it becomes less scary. The second thing that they talk about is just statistically speaking, the more you go out there, the more that you put your product or service out there, the more that you ask, yes, you're going to get more no's, but eventually, statistically speaking, you will get a yes. So for every no that you get, it's just one step closer to a yes. So just know that even though it's a no now, there will be a yes. And just having that confidence in knowing helps you to get over that fear of rejection. So those are just kind of some common challenges that I see. All right, so I'm just pausing for a moment. I will summarize at the very end, but I just wanted to see if there were any questions. Oh wait, Ashley, unmute.
You think I'd learn to do better at this point. We actually have a few questions, and I'll just kick off with the first one. How do I approach a prospect or a customer?
So if you've never approached anybody before, you've created your product or service, and you're like, okay, now what do I do? Where do I go? So I mentioned just number one is to help guide you. Try to find out. I mean, you should know this by now, like where your product or service helps somebody. So figure out, where does it help people, and start there, and start looking up, if there's a specific industry, maybe you want to try this industry out. When you're an entrepreneur, everything's very agile and flexible. So you can try it out. If it doesn't work, that's okay. You can try something else out, but maybe start with an industry or start with a company type in a B2B world, and then start looking, asking, and maybe within your own networks, you have people who work for companies. You can try testing things out first to see like what resonates and what doesn't resonate. But there's a technique called cold calling, which is as old as time, where you just pick up the phone and call somebody. And, a lot of people are scared to do that. But I will say, I think out of my experience, I would get more traction through calling people than email or LinkedIn, because I find that a lot of people get, and especially now that I'm an entrepreneur as well, I get hit up on LinkedIn all the time by people. But you can tell when they know what you do and what your company's about or not. A lot of people are just sending out mass emails or mass mailings. This goes back to kind of researching and understanding and knowing who you're talking to. Because if somebody demonstrates to me that they really understand what's going on within my business and what maybe some problems are within my business, I'm more likely to respond to them, because I say, yeah, I do have that problem. But if you're just sort of guessing and throwing things out there, they may not respond. So I would just say, do your research as far as who the good target is for your product or service. Find out who that person is, know a little bit about them, see if there's a mutual connection. The number one best way to reach out to someone is through a warm introduction. So if you do know someone who knows someone, that is by far the best way. A lot of people will take the time to listen or hear from you if you're introduced by somebody else. So I kind of threw a lot of things out there, but.
Yeah. Awesome. The next question comes from our online chat. In your experience, is utilizing associates related to your target markets a scalable way to grow sales, or should that be an intro strategy that can be expanded on?
So using associates, wait, can you expand on or can you say the first part of it again?
It's in your experience, is utilizing associations related to your target markets a scalable way to grow sales?
I haven't found it to be like scalable, but I'll say that in the beginning, it's helpful because if you can participate in association, some associations are stronger than others. Like some people join an association, but they don't really participate or do anything in it. The association members, some associations are very strong. Like when I worked at the startup in Seattle and we sold to the building departments of cities and counties, all the building inspectors were tight. Like their association was strong. They really talked to each other. They learned off of each other. And so it's a good place to do a lot of research and information gathering. You can build sales there. I know I've attended trade shows and conferences where I've met these building inspectors and sometimes it would work out, but ultimately all of these points of contact, whether it's through an association, through networking or any other way, now has created a warm lead opportunity. So you're not blind cold going in and saying, hi, I work with this company. You're now saying, I met you at this association meeting. I talked to you about this at this conference. I know you from something else. So now it's just a warm entry point. The scalable piece, if you end up building a sales team, then you can really start scaling because then you just have more volume going through. But when you're just starting out, it's hard to balance this plus all the other things that an entrepreneur has to balance. So it's a good way to start.
Okay, the next question also comes from our online chat. What do you do as a salesperson if customer service falls flat? As the relationship owner, how do you rescue that relationship and maintain your own credibility?
Okay, so, and I don't know if this is exactly what this is, but it sounds like maybe you have the sale is done and now they're a customer, and then it's sort of the after sale part I was describing. So they're not getting the same like service that they were initially. So a lot of that, and I don't know if this person is an entrepreneur or founder of a company, but it sounds like if that's the case, then this company is a little bit bigger than just like a pure brand new startup. In the world, there's a lot of organizations that are set up this way where it's a sales team goes out and sells the product's implemented, and then a customer service or account management team sort of manages the product or manages the customer. So, I know for different organizations I've worked for, even though I sold the product or service and I was no longer involved as a salesperson, I would try to just stay in touch, infrequently, I guess, but I would try to stay in touch because I did build that relationship and provide another feedback avenue for that customer. If they don't feel comfortable going to whoever their account manager is, if they don't feel like they have a place to go to air their grievances, so to speak, I always leave that channel open because you just never know also if that customer will leave and go to another company. You just want to maintain the relationship. So if someone's having a poor experience, even though I'm not selling a product anymore to them, I would still try and get involved and see where I can help. Because ultimately, as somebody who is proud of your product or proud of your service, you want them to have a good experience. You want them to maintain using your product and service, and you want them to obviously have a good experience. So any place that you can be open and help with that, I think is welcome. Obviously, again, people are busy, but people remember when you have a relationship and you follow through and come through for them and show up for them. just like I was saying earlier, if you show up, they remember that. So if there's a way to leave that door open, even after the sale, to be open for feedback, tell me more, I want to hear more about your experience, then you should encourage that.
Next question also comes from our online chat. For B2B sales, is there a good balance with prospective leads of cold reach outs versus warm intros, aka working to get warm intros versus working to reach out to the more cold leads?
So I think it's like a quantity versus quality question. Cold calling works. So if you want to dial the digits and send the emails and whatever, like I said earlier with statistics, there you might get a bunch of no's, but you'll get some yeses in there. That's definitely a route you can take. If you're a bigger company, then you could probably afford to do both. Like you can spend time doing both. I know as a salesperson myself, I made the time to do the cold stuff. I took like a day a week to do the cold stuff, and then take a day a week to try and reach out to existing networking contacts. So you kind of want to do both, because you never know where your next customer could come from, and you don't really want to cut yourself off from anything. I'll say the warm is a better experience. Just it is, because the people and it's more familiar and comfortable. But again, people get scared because they don't want to be that weird, like pushy person that's aggressive and like, hey, set me up with this person. So you really, again, want to approach it from like, I really think I can help this business out. I see that they have this problem going on, or I see that this is going on within their business. And that's from doing the research again. So you're not just blindly saying like, hey, hook me up with this person, you're saying, I see a problem and I'd love to talk with them about it and see if maybe what I have to offer could really help them. That's just a different approach. So there's different ways to do it. If you can get warm leads, you should get warm leads. It's the best, but don't discount the cold call.
Perfect. One of our biggest sales challenges as a technology startup is lack of brand recognition and competing with better known competitors. How do you recommend counteracting this perceived risk?
Oh yes, that is hard. I'll tell you, when I worked at Amex, I love the fact that everybody recognized who I was when I called them, and almost felt like, oh, you're calling me from Amex? That is definitely an advantage for a bigger brand, for sure. However, bigger brands tend to be less agile, tend to be less flexible. They won't negotiate as much. And so these are advantages that a smaller, startup might have over a big firm. They're also like one of a million fish when it comes to a big firm. If you can position yourself truly as a subject matter expert, as a go-to, as a consultant, as a relationship, someone who has a relationship with them that understands, again, their needs, what's going to help their problems, what's going to help them reach their goals, and you have that more personal connection with them. And also, if there's a differentiator, I mean, you created this company for a reason. It's because something didn't exist in the marketplace somewhere. So if you have something that differentiates you from everybody else, you want to play that up as well. And if you can use that challenger process where that differentiator is what can actually solve their problem over all these other generic big brand things, I would really zero in on that. Again, at the end of the day, sales really is a people to people experience. So if you can get that relationship, ultimately, a lot of decision makers make decisions off of risk. Is this a risky decision to make? I don't know if I want to invest in this because you're a startup. But if you're proving to them that you're showing up and that you're in it for the relationship, that this customer is important to you, that you really want to see them grow and make it about them, you'll find that people are really interested in working with you. I know also as an entrepreneur, I don't know about anyone else out there, but when I was setting up like our bank accounts, I tried going to a big bank and they wouldn't call me back. And I was going back and forth and I ended up working with a really small bank who's been awesome. They like take my phone call. They talk to me all the time. They're really like, have the customer service aspect going. They addressed everything that I needed, that I was concerned about. And so that's the difference that you can make.
Yeah, you also a lot of times get that one-on-one attention. Minsun asks, could you comment on pros and cons and compare B2B and freemium models?
So, so freemium is when you're signing up for something on like a trial basis, right? And then eventually like something kicks in after. You know, I haven't, in a B2B world, I haven't really seen that as much, unless it's like an online, again, like an online subscription type service. Then yes, I don't know. I know a lot of times technologies, it's difficult to maybe try and negotiate with different levers. But you can do trials if you want to do that. I do think that if you're going to take the time to customize something for a customer, I mean, that's your time and your resources too. So I don't know that I necessarily would offer freemium on like a custom basis, but if you're a subscription service that's out there and you just have freemium available for businesses to try out for 14 days or 10 days or whatever it is, that's fine. And then, you know, I know that a lot of the online companies have, you know, contact us for like a customized solution so they can try out the service first on like the most basic level, and then contact later for the customized version. You know, I don't know. I guess I would say look at your data and see what your conversion rate is, like how successful is it? Because I think it is successful in some areas and other areas it's not. So it just sort of depends on your company. But if you do have data and it shows that like you have a successful conversion with that and people want to continue talking with you and working with you on customized solutions, then you can kick in your negotiation piece and use your different levers. But I would just take a look at what your own data says.
Great. So we are nearing the end, but I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
What is the best way to find leads?
So, you know, if you're just starting out, I would just figure out who's your target, who's your optimal customer that uses this, because you don't want to just go blindly on this. Mm-hmm. I used to get leads because I was targeting CFOs, any company over a certain size, like 1,000 employees or a certain revenue size. I used to use the book of lists from the Business Journal to contact CEOs of companies, CFOs, you know, so I could see their names at least and their companies, because sometimes I just weren't even aware of their companies. There's Dun & Bradstreet. There's all sorts of other like marketing lists you can buy out there that are specific by industry as well. Like I said, there's associations. Sometimes associations will post their members on there, not always. Sometimes you have to join to see them, but you can see example names of companies so that you know who to reach out to. And then once again, you know, LinkedIn has all sorts of tools that you can sort of drill down and see who you want to, you know, what types of companies are out there. Because sometimes it's just not even knowing that a company exists out there. You can also narrow it by geography too, if you want to just target a specific geography. It can be very overwhelming if you're just like, okay, the whole world could be my customer and, you know, any size company. But if you can just sort of find like, what's your sweet spot, you know, what's your sweet spot, and then just sort of replicate it and then expand from there, it's a little bit easier and less daunting.
Awesome. Earlier you mentioned a resource, Go for No.
Yes.
Do you have any other resources that you would recommend for our audience?
So the Challenger Sales book that I mentioned in this, Go for No is another book. This is another very old school book, but it's called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty by Harvey Mackey. And it just talks about networking also. So it's just a good general book when it comes to sales that, you know, nobody likes it when you're suddenly showing up like, hey, I got this thing for you. If you've already sort of built the relationship and you've started a relationship with them about, you know, you as a subject matter expert and it's already in existence, when the time comes and they have a need, you're there already. You're not just like showing up at the last minute. So those are some books that I've read throughout the years. There's a lot. There's like the little black book of sales or little red book of sales. I forgot the name of it, but there's a lot of like little just sales skills type books out there too. There's a ton. A lot of them are good.
Awesome. Thank you for all those resources.
Yeah.
And that's actually all we have time for today. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and a big thank you to Jessica for sharing her wisdom with the group. As a reminder, next Friday at noon, we'll be hearing.
I'm just putting my key takeaways as they leave.
We'll be hearing from Renata Agrella, who will be presenting on building high functioning teams. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining today.